Have you ever felt lost amidst the relationships around you? Have you ever wondered whether loneliness is truly as frightening as people say? In life, we are often swept away by societal expectations, believing that happiness must come from the recognition of others. But Buddhism teaches that true happiness does not arise from external sources, it comes from the peace within ourselves. Today, we will take a closer look at the nature of relationships, solitude, and the significance of letting go of imposed expectations. When you understand this deeply, you will no longer fear silence. Instead, you will embrace it as a precious gift on the path to enlightenment. People often mistakenly believe that happiness comes from connecting with others, from being recognized, loved, and belonging to a community or group. But in the light of the Dharma, true happiness does not depend on external conditions, it lies in the inner peace within. When we are young, we chase after achievements, relationships, and fame. Yet, as time passes and we gradually enter the later stages of life, we come to realize that everything we once clung to is impermanent, that all things can vanish in an instant. At that moment, loneliness is no longer something to fear, it becomes an opportunity to look within, to return to the pure essence of our being. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of suffering. When we place our self-worth in the recognition of others, we bind ourselves to an endless cycle of hope and disappointment. If today we are praised, we feel joy; if tomorrow we are criticized, we suffer. If we are surrounded by friends, we feel valuable; if one day no one reaches out, we fall into loneliness. This is how we lose ourselves in the endless cycle of emotions, in desires that have no end. In youth, busyness often masks our fear of loneliness. We throw ourselves into work, into social gatherings, into constant activity, trying to fill the emptiness inside. But as we grow older, as social engagements become less frequent, as work is no longer our main concern, and as our children build lives of their own, we are left facing ourselves more than ever before. It is in these moments that we realize we have spent our whole lives looking outward, forgetting to nurture the world within. In Buddhism, solitude is not a punishment, it is an opportunity. The wise, the monks, the enlightened ones, these individuals often seek solitude to reflect, to discover the truth of existence. When the Buddha was still a prince, despite living in a palace filled with luxury, he felt empty. He renounced everything to seek the stillness of the forest, and it was in that deep silence that he attained supreme enlightenment. If the mind is still caught up in recognition, in fame, in external relationships, then silence can feel burdensome. But if we learn to let go, to look deeply within, that very silence becomes the path to liberation. Loneliness is not a loss, it is a return. When we no longer cling to external things, we gain the opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply, to reassess what truly matters in life. In youth, we often think that happiness lies in great accomplishments, a successful career, a perfect family, a rich social life. But as we age, we come to see that true happiness is found in the simplest of things: a peaceful morning, a warm cup of tea, a mind unburdened by worry. The Buddha teaches that all things arise and cease according to conditions. Relationships, too, follow this natural law. Some people walk with us for a long stretch of life, yet at some point, they depart, not because anyone is at fault, but simply because the time has come for each to continue their journey in different directions. If we understand this, we no longer suffer when someone leaves us, no longer cling to what has passed. Instead, we learn to cherish what is here in the present. Old age is not a loss, it is a liberation. If youth is the time of ambition and pursuit, then old age is the time to let go. To return to simplicity, to embrace our most authentic selves. There is a Buddhist saying, all phenomena are empty, arising and ceasing due to conditions. When we understand this, we no longer fear the changes of life, no longer resist the natural flow of things. Instead, we learn to receive all that comes with equanimity, neither grasping nor rejecting. Looking back on life, we see that suffering arises from craving. We long to be loved, to be cared for, to hold on to what is pleasant and good. But life is inherently impermanent. If we keep chasing something that cannot last, we will only bring ourselves sorrow. Yet, if we accept things as they are, if we let go, we can find peace in any situation. Stillness is not something to fear, it is a gift. Only when we are still can we truly hear ourselves, truly recognize what is essential. Only in stillness can we sense the vastness of the universe, the boundlessness of the heart. Life is a journey, and each stage has its own purpose. Youth is the time for exploration, for learning, for seeking. Old age is the time to return, to reflect, to live fully with ourselves. If we cherish each stage, if we live fully in the present, then no matter our age, we can always find peace. And when we truly understand this, when we let go of all grasping, when we stop seeking happiness outside of ourselves, then in this very moment, we can smile, knowing that we are already whole, that we have found ourselves in the silence of the soul. In the teachings of the Buddha, self-reliance is a fundamental principle, exemplified by his own life and spiritual path. When he was still Prince Alexander, he lived in a grand palace, surrounded by everything the world considers happiness: power, status, wealth, and family. Yet none of these things could free him from the suffering inherent in human existence. Old age, sickness, and death come to all, whether rich or poor, noble or lowly. Seeing the impermanent nature of the world, he renounced everything, stepping alone into the depths of the forest in search of the truth, not relying on anyone, not seeking liberation from any external power. The Buddha taught that the path to enlightenment is one of self-reliance. He once proclaimed, "Be a lamp unto yourself." No one can walk this path on our behalf. No divine being can grant us enlightenment. Only through our own effort, through steadfast practice of the Dharma, can we transform suffering and attain liberation. In modern life, people are entangled in complex social relationships, bound by expectations and responsibilities, many of which they do not even understand why they must carry. We seek recognition from others, fear judgment, and strive to please family, friends, and colleagues. But at some point, as the years pass and we finally have time to reflect, we realize that much of what we have done was for others, not truly for ourselves. Old age, seen from a positive perspective, is a time to release unnecessary burdens. We no longer need to chase society's expectations, nor strain ourselves to meet the demands of others. This is a time to truly live for ourselves, to turn inward and discover the completeness already present within our own hearts. However, self-reliance does not mean isolating oneself or cutting off relationships. Many mistakenly believe that to live self-reliantly is to abandon all social connections and need no one. But true self-reliance in Buddhism is not so extreme. It is an independence of the mind, the ability to feel complete without relying on external validation. When we are at peace with ourselves, we engage in relationships more sincerely, not out of emotional deficiency, not out of fear of loneliness, but from a place of wholeness. Without self-reliance, we become dependent in relationships. We expect others to bring us happiness, to treat us in a way that aligns with our desires, to always be present for us. But when they fail to meet these expectations, we suffer, we blame, we grieve. If we cultivate self-reliance, we stop searching for happiness outside ourselves and instead generate peace from within. In doing so, no matter the external conditions, we can remain centered and free. In the Buddhist scriptures, there is a story of a man who came to the Buddha and asked, "How can I stop suffering from the judgments of others?" The Buddha gently replied, "If someone brings you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man answered, "Of course, it belongs to the one who offered it." The Buddha smiled, "Then judgments are like that gift. If you do not accept them, they do not belong to you." This is a profound lesson in self-reliance. When we are no longer affected by external criticism, when we refuse to let it dictate our emotions, we attain true freedom. Most suffering in life does not come from events themselves but from how we react to them. A harsh word only wounds us if we believe it, if we allow it to seep into our hearts. But if we deeply understand our own worth, if we no longer need validation from others to feel complete, then such words lose their power over us. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever we want, but the state of being unbound by expectations and desires. A truly free person is not one who shirks responsibility but one who fulfills their responsibilities with serenity, without fear or pressure. They help others not because they seek recognition as a good person, but because they see the act as necessary. They express love not to receive something in return, but because love naturally flows from their heart. Looking back on life, we see that much suffering arises from losing ourselves, forgetting our true values, forgetting what genuinely brings us happiness. We allow external circumstances to dictate our emotions, to control our inner state. But if we cultivate self-reliance, if we build inner stability, then no matter how life changes, we remain steadfast. Consider the life of the Buddha. After attaining enlightenment, he spent 45 years spreading the Dharma, expecting nothing in return, clinging to nothing. He traveled from village to village, teaching all people from kings to the poorest of the poor. He did not seek the world's praise, nor was he disturbed by criticism. He simply did what needed to be done, with a free heart and unwavering wisdom. That is the ultimate freedom, the liberation from all worldly attachments. If each of us could learn from his example, if we could kindle the lamp of wisdom within, life would become much lighter. No longer fearing change, no longer clinging to what is not ours, no longer chasing happiness outside ourselves. In that moment, we realize that true happiness is not somewhere distant but exists right here within the serene and unshakable heart of our own being. Relationships in life are inherently impermanent. The Buddha taught that everything in this world changes according to the law of dependent origination. When conditions come together, something arises. When conditions disperse, it ceases to exist. No one can hold onto a relationship in an unchanging state, for both people and circumstances are constantly evolving. In our youth, we often believe that having many friends and numerous social connections equates to a rich and successful life. But as we navigate the trials and lessons of existence, we gradually realize that what truly matters is not the number of people around us, but the quality of the relationships we genuinely cherish. Some individuals accompany us on a certain stretch of life's journey, only to drift apart due to various circumstances. Their departure may leave us with a sense of nostalgia, but if we look deeper, we will see that even their temporary presence in our lives brought valuable lessons. A relationship does not need to last forever to hold meaning. If, during the time it existed, it helped us grow and understand more about ourselves and the world, then it was already a precious gift. In the Buddha's teachings, true friendship is not based on attachment or expectation but on mutual respect and support along the path of practice. The Buddha himself had companions such as the 5 ascetics who once left him when they disagreed with his approach to asceticism. However, after he attained enlightenment, they were the first to receive his teachings and eventually became Aryans. True friendship is not about clinging to one another but about guiding each other toward the right path. In modern life, as technology advances and social media becomes a dominant form of interaction, we may have hundreds or even thousands of friends online. Yet, when we face real hardships, these numbers mean little. If there are no sincere, deep connections, a true friend is not one who is only present in moments of joy but one who walks alongside us in times of struggle, someone with whom we can share our innermost thoughts without fear of judgment. For this reason, instead of spreading ourselves thin over many superficial relationships, we should treasure those who truly bring spiritual value into our lives. A meaningful conversation with a kindred spirit can nourish the soul more than 100 casual social encounters. When we let go of the pressure to maintain relationships merely to please others, we will feel lighter and more at peace, allowing us to focus on what truly matters. This principle aligns with what the Buddha taught in the Four Means of Embracing Others, which are generosity, kind speech, beneficial conduct, and cooperation. By applying these principles, we not only sustain meaningful relationships but also help others grow on the path of virtue. However, to truly appreciate the value of meaningful connections, we must also learn to accept loss. Every relationship has a beginning and an end. This is an inescapable truth. A friend may leave, a relationship may fade, but when we understand impermanence, we will no longer suffer or cling. Instead, we will cherish what has been, hold on to the beautiful memories, and let things go with ease. This leads us to a deeper realization: happiness does not lie outside of us, nor does it depend on the number of relationships we have. It is found within our own inner peace. When we no longer rely on the presence of others to feel complete, when we no longer seek external validation, we attain true spiritual freedom. From here, we transition to another vital aspect of the spiritual journey: solitude and self-reflection. If the quality of our relationships helps us understand the value of friendship, solitude offers us the opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply. In Buddhist tradition, many enlightened masters chose a life of solitude, retreating from the noise of the world to seek inner tranquility. However, this does not mean they rejected humanity or escaped from life. Rather, they recognized that in silence, one can uncover the most profound truths about oneself. In contemporary society, many people fear solitude, equating it with emotional emptiness, isolation, or abandonment. But from the perspective of meditation, solitude is not an emptiness that needs to be filled, it is an opportunity to return to oneself. When we sit alone in silence, undistracted by external noise, we can look deeply into our minds and see the emotions and thoughts we often overlook in our busy lives. Solitude can become a sacred space, a place to process the past, release regrets, and fully embrace the present. This is why meditation holds such an essential place in Buddhist practice. When we sit in meditation, we do not seek anything outside ourselves, we simply observe, realizing the true nature of all things. Happiness is not something we need to chase, it is something that has always been within us. When we can sit alone and feel a sense of wholeness, it is a sign that our hearts have truly found peace. And only when we have inner stability can we enter relationships freely, without attachment, without fear, without needing something in return. Thus, shifting our focus from quantity to quality in relationships mirrors the deeper transformation of shifting from seeking happiness externally to discovering peace within. Once we understand this, we will no longer be swept away by superficial connections, nor will we fear solitude. Instead, we will appreciate each moment, each person who brings genuine meaning to our lives. And when we have embraced the beauty of solitude, we can move forward to an even more profound inquiry: how to transform solitude into a path of self-reflection, a doorway to wisdom and liberation. Solitude is a state that many people fear because they often confuse it with isolation. While isolation is a condition of being pushed away from society, disconnected from meaningful relationships, solitude is a choice, a sacred space where one can return to oneself, reflect, and cultivate inner understanding, leading to spiritual maturity. For those who have practiced meditation or lived in mindfulness, solitude is not an empty void to be dreaded, but a sanctuary, an opportunity to perceive the deeper layers of existence. In Buddhist teachings, solitude is not deprivation but a necessary condition for wisdom to arise. The Buddha himself left his palace, renounced his family and worldly prestige, and wandered alone into the forest in search of truth. He lived in seclusion, unbound by worldly distractions, seeking no external gratification, but instead turning inward to perceive the true nature of all things. Without that solitude, would he have attained enlightenment? In modern life, solitude does not only arise from being physically distant from people or one's environment. It also manifests in moments when one feels lost even within relationships. There are times when we sit among a crowd yet feel empty because interactions remain superficial, and conversations fail to reach the depths of our souls. This is the solitude of the heart, an inner state that modern individuals increasingly encounter as they become entangled in the relentless cycle of work, responsibilities, and societal expectations. Instead of avoiding solitude, we can learn to embrace it as a means to attain peace. Solitude can be a gift if we use it for self-reflection, to truly face ourselves without the distractions of the external world. When we sit alone with ourselves, with no one to please and no societal pressures forcing us to become someone we are not, we begin to see our thoughts, emotions, and tendencies more clearly. Buddhism refers to this as inner reflection, an essential process on the path of spiritual practice. Without moments of stillness to examine ourselves, we remain trapped in endless cycles of ambition and suffering, never truly understanding where we are headed. It is akin to a lake. When the water is still, we can see the bottom clearly. But if it is constantly disturbed by waves and turbulence, we can never perceive the reality beneath. In meditation practice, solitude is not a passive state but an active journey inward. When we meditate, we are not escaping the world but observing it from a different perspective. We do not get caught up in thoughts, worries, or desires. Instead, we simply acknowledge them and let them pass. Solitude allows us to confront our deepest fears. When no one is around to distract us, we are forced to face our wounds, memories, and the truths we have long buried. This can be challenging but also an opportunity for healing. When we truly sit with our pain without avoidance or denial, we realize that it no longer has the power to control us. This is why many spiritual masters choose the path of retreat, living alone in forests, mountains, or entirely secluded spaces. They do not do so to escape the world but to observe their own minds deeply, to gain insight into the nature of suffering and happiness. But solitude is not only for monks or meditation practitioners. In everyday life, anyone can find beauty in solitude if they know how to embrace it. One can sit alone in a cafe, take a walk in the park, or spend a quiet evening at home without feeling lacking or isolated. When we can enjoy these moments without anxiety, without compulsively checking our phones or seeking attention, it is a sign of a truly grounded soul. Solitude also helps us reassess our relationships. When we no longer fear being alone, we stop clinging to relationships out of fear of solitude. We no longer hold on to connections that no longer serve us or seek validation from those who do not truly understand us. This allows us to cultivate deeper, more meaningful relationships, ones where we connect authentically rather than merely using them to fill an inner void. Solitude brings a profound sense of freedom. When we are no longer dependent on external factors for happiness, we can live more authentically. We no longer seek societal approval or remain bound by others' expectations. We are free to live as we truly wish, pursuing what is meaningful to us rather than merely chasing external standards. From this perspective, we can see that solitude is not a negative state but an opportunity for growth. Those who embrace solitude are not abandoned but have attained a certain level of inner peace and self-sufficiency. However, solitude does not mean detachment from the world. When we understand the value of solitude, we can engage in relationships in a healthier way, no longer driven by fear or neediness. At this stage, we realize that family and community still play an important role in life, but not in the way we once thought. Family is not merely where we are born but also the people we choose to be with, those who uplift our spirit, those who share our values and aspirations. When we have understood ourselves, we can contribute to family life in a more meaningful way, not out of obligation, but from genuine sincerity. The same applies to community. When we no longer seek external validation, we can participate in society more selflessly, not to satisfy personal desires, but to genuinely contribute. When the ego no longer dominates us, we can give freely with wisdom, with listening, with our very presence. Thus, solitude is not an escape from the world but a journey to understand it more deeply. When we learn to appreciate solitude, we no longer feel lost in life. Instead, we discover a more profound connection with ourselves and with those around us. From this space of inner wholeness, we enter a new stage of growth, one in which family and community are no longer places where we lose ourselves but spaces where we bring light and wisdom to others. In the perspective of Buddhism, family is not only the place where one is born but also the environment that first shapes one's character, having a profound influence on each individual's spiritual journey. The Buddha taught that all people are connected by karmic relationships, and the family is the convergence point of these karmic ties. However, is every family truly a place that nurtures love, understanding, and enlightenment? In reality, this is not always the case. Therefore, understanding the true nature of family, its role in spiritual life, and how to reconcile familial bonds with liberation is something that each person must reflect upon. Family is often seen as the foundation upon which one grows, yet it can also be the source of many attachments, worries, and suffering. The expectations, responsibilities, and conflicts between family members often become the main causes of inner turmoil. However, when viewed through the lens of Buddhist teachings, the difficulties in family life should not be avoided but seen as opportunities to practice patience, compassion, and wisdom. One important teaching in Buddhism is to understand the karmic relationships between family members. No one becomes a parent, child, or sibling by accident. These relationships are the result of karmic ties from previous lifetimes. If a family member continually brings suffering into our lives, it may indicate an unresolved karmic relationship. When we understand this, we no longer blame or harbor resentment but instead seek to transform suffering into compassion and forgiveness. The Buddha taught that people often cling to family bonds and forget the truth of impermanence. Today we have parents, siblings, spouses, and children, but tomorrow all of this could change. Death can come at any time, and all we can do is cherish each moment, live fully with one another in the present, and not create additional negative karma. When we understand this, we are no longer attached to petty disputes within the family. Instead, we live with a heart that is more open and compassionate. A happy family is not one without conflict, but one that knows how to use those conflicts as a means for learning and growth. With understanding and mindfulness, differences in thoughts and lifestyles no longer become barriers but opportunities to cultivate patience, endurance, and the ability to let go of the ego. Family is not only a place to receive but also a place to give. As we mature, we are no longer the child who only receives love from our parents but must also become the one who gives that love in return. This is the transformation from a passive recipient to one who holds wisdom, a guide for the next generation. Eastern traditions have always emphasized filial piety, and in Buddhism, it is considered one of the most important virtues. But filial piety is not merely about providing material care for one's parents. More importantly, it is about helping them find peace in their hearts. If our parents are still caught in suffering and worry, it is our responsibility to help them understand karma and impermanence so that they can let go of attachments and live more lightly. A child can repay their parents' kindness by becoming a virtuous person, living ethically, and spreading good values within the family. Family extends beyond biological relationships to include those within the community. In Buddhism, a person is not only responsible for their small family but also for the community to which they belong. In today's society, individualism is often celebrated, causing people to grow more distant from one another. But in reality, no one can live alone without connection to others. The community plays a crucial role in nurturing spiritual growth. A good community helps us cultivate compassion, forgiveness, and a spirit of sharing. On the other hand, if we are immersed in environments full of greed, anger, and delusion, we can easily become polluted and lose our inner peace. Therefore, choosing the right community is just as important as choosing the right spiritual path. In Buddhism, the Sangha is an ideal example of a group bound by wisdom and compassion. Monks and nuns live together not because of material needs but because they share a common ideal, striving towards enlightenment. This is also a model that anyone can apply in life, seeking those who share similar values, learning from each other, and supporting each other on the path of personal development. However, community is not only a place to receive but also a place to give. When we contribute to the community with wisdom, through listening, or simply by being genuinely present, we experience a deep joy, the joy that comes from authentic connection, not from superficial, transactional relationships. Yet, one of the most important aspects of living within a family and community is maintaining balance. Some people become so immersed in family life that they forget about themselves, while others pursue community life and neglect their responsibilities at home. Buddhism always emphasizes the middle way, neither excessive nor deficient. A wise person knows how to arrange their time and energy in such a way that harmony between these two aspects is maintained. Finally, once we understand the role of family and community in our spiritual development, we must also recognize that there are certain boundaries that should not be crossed. Family and community can bring joy, but if we cling too tightly to them, we will fall into suffering. When we place too many expectations on our loved ones or those around us, we are more likely to feel disappointed when things do not go as planned. The most important thing is to have a free heart, not bound by societal expectations. We can love our family and connect with our community, but we must also understand that true peace does not come from the outside but from within. This is the crucial step that allows us to release the pressures of society and live a life of serenity and equanimity, free from the standards and prejudices of the world. In the modern world, with its invisible standards and pressures, people often fall into the whirlpool of expectations. From a young age, each person is taught that they must lead a certain life, excel academically, have a stable job, marry, have children, and maintain relationships that conform to societal norms. But is this really the only path to happiness? Buddhism teaches that all human suffering arises from attachment to material things, to fame, to relationships, and especially to the expectations imposed by society. Letting go of societal expectations does not mean abandoning responsibility or distancing oneself from others. Rather, it is learning to live with oneself, without being bound by external standards. Society may tell us that we need more friends or that we must live up to certain norms, but if we continually chase after these things, we will never achieve true peace. We may have many friends, but if those relationships are only maintained out of fear of loneliness, they become a burden rather than a joy. A life lived according to society's standards may bring acceptance, but does it truly reflect our authentic selves? One of the deep-rooted causes of being bound by social expectations is the fear of judgment. We often worry about what others think of us, afraid that if we live differently, we will be isolated or seen as failures. But Buddhism emphasizes that the judgment of others is not truly important. Everyone has their own perspective, and what they think reflects their worldview, not our true nature. If we continue to fear the opinions of others, we will lose ourselves. There is a story in the Buddhist scriptures about a man and his son traveling through many villages, leading a donkey. When both rode on the donkey, people criticized them for being cruel to the animal. When only the father rode, they said he didn't love his son. When only the son rode, they accused him of being unfilial. And when both walked beside the donkey, people mocked them for not using the animal. No matter what they did, there was always someone to criticize. This story reminds us that there is no way to please everyone, so it is best to live according to our own understanding and truth. Letting go of social expectations does not mean avoiding others or living selfishly. It is about finding the path that is right for oneself. One can choose not to marry yet still live a fulfilling life. One can give up a high-paying job to pursue a passion. One can reject the material values that society upholds and still live in peace. When we stop chasing after the standards of others, we have more time to listen to ourselves, to understand what we truly need and desire. Especially as we age, we realize that what we once considered important may not truly matter. The relationships we try to maintain but bring no joy, the fame we chase but that never brings satisfaction, all become burdens if we do not know how to let go. Growing old is not a decline but an opportunity to step away from the noise of the world, to slow down, and to enjoy inner stillness. Buddhism teaches that life is impermanent, everything changes, and if we continue to cling to what is not ours, we will only create more suffering. True freedom comes from accepting that we do not have to live according to any model, but only in a way that brings peace to our minds. In life, there will be times when we feel isolated for not following the majority, but solitude does not mean unhappiness. On the contrary, solitude can be a gift, providing time to understand oneself, cultivate wisdom, and truly live the way we wish. If we can free ourselves from the fear of judgment, if we can let go of external pressures, we will realize that happiness does not come from others' recognition, but from the harmony between our soul and the life we choose. Letting go of social expectations is a journey, not something that can be done immediately. But each day, if we can let go just a little, listen to ourselves a little more, we will gradually feel the lightness and freedom this brings. True peace is not in chasing the world, but in returning to oneself. When we let go of expectations and cease seeking external validation, we will realize that loneliness is not a fear, but an opportunity to return to ourselves. Just as the sages found peace in stillness, you too can learn to appreciate solitude as a natural part of life. For in the end, what matters is not how many people are by your side, but how well you understand yourself. When the mind is still, everything becomes clear. And when you truly connect with yourself, you will realize that you were never truly alone.